News breaking on Monday morning that Bosasa boss Gavin Watson had been killed in a car crash on the road into OR Tambo International Airport. Obviously, a lot of speculation already, all kinds of theories abounding. Cowan, investigative reporter at News 24, joining me to dissect all of this. So, Carl, let's start with what we actually know and sorting out the myth from the fact. What do we know about what actually happened in this accident?
Not much. We know that the vehicle that Mr. Watson was travelling in collided with a concrete pillar adjacent to the road. We know that he was declared dead at the scene. We know that his body was removed from the scene and taken to Germiston mortuary. And other than that, we don't know much. We don't know what caused the accident. We don't know whether he lost control of the vehicle. We don't know whether he purposefully hit that pillar. All these conspiracy theories are, of course, relevant and valid, I suppose, to what has happened, but we just don't know enough about those final moments to understand exactly what happened.
So let's talk about the events leading up to it, the 24 hours preceding the accident. We understand that Gavin Watson called a prayer meeting,
Yes.
and then he signed out this Toyota Corolla from Bosasa. Tell us about that.
So that's interesting because according to Franz Forster, who was the fleet manager at Bosasa, he managed all their vehicles. Gavin Watson was not accustomed to driving a manual car. He had a big BMW X5. It's a high-performance car. It's automatic. He's driven it for ages. He's driven other fancy cars for ages. So this Corolla was like really, it's something that Gavin wouldn't be used to driving. And it's also one of the fleet vehicles of Bosasa that is used to run to the airport and back. And according to people who were around Bosasa at the time, Gavin didn't like traveling in this Toyota because he felt they were unsafe. So we haven't verified any of this, but this seems to me that it's quite strange that he would get into this car. But now what we're being told is the BMW had some mechanical problems, so he took this car off to the prayer meeting and he drove out, and people who were there commented saying, "What's he doing driving that car? He can't drive a manual. This looks like a bad idea."
And the fact that there was actually a prayer meeting, that's not an anomaly for Gavin Watson.
No. If we go back to the testimony of Mr. Angelo Grizzi before the Zondo Commission, he actually spoke of regular prayer meetings every morning before work. Bosasa at management level, the employees would come into a boardroom and they would have to pray out loud, and the prayer meetings would last up to 2 hours. And they would hold vigils, overnight for if there were some serious happenings in the political space, So, Gavin has been a man who has always publicly professed to be extremely religious. He's always, as they say, walked with the Bible under his arm.
So this accident occurred at 5:05 in the morning. Do we know who the first people were on the scene? Do we know what the circumstances were? What was found in the car? His cell phone was missing, which I thought was a bit strange.
Yeah, so what we understand now is that his cell phone was not in the car with him. The only thing that was found was a wallet with about 70 Rand in it, an ID and a driver's license. That's about it. I believe there are some bank cards in the wallet as well, as a normal a wallet would be. No luggage, no laptop bag, nothing like that. So there's a couple of things that this surrounding this that would seem strange. You're going to the airport, you're not taking any luggage, so what's going on? You don't have your cell phone. If I go for a flight, I've got my phone, I've got my bag, I've got my laptop. You're going for a reason. So a couple of explanations for this. One, the car, just after the accident, the car was actually raided by someone who was standing close by. People came in, grabbed the phone, grabbed his watch. It does happen from time to time at accident scenes. Things get stolen out of cars, even if people are dead or dying inside the car. It's not unheard of. The other option is that he was going for a meeting and he had left his cell phone at home because he didn't want to be tracked. He took this Toyota Corolla because he didn't want to be seen in his normal car. So perhaps he was going to the airport, which is a good place to meet someone if you want to escape, notice from people who might be following you.
Do we know if he had a flight booked anywhere?
We're still trying to confirm that. It's very difficult, that kind of information isn't usually just given out. So we're trying to confirm that. It would suggest the timing. 5 o'clock in the morning. The only reason I'm at the airport at 5 o'clock in the morning is because I'm catching that first flight out on a Monday.
Okay, so there is a lot of speculation about what may have happened. I've heard all sorts of theories that he's with Stefano De Mera drinking cocktails in the Cayman Islands, that there was a wax body that was placed there, that he paid off a homeless man to take his place. There are various scenarios. It could have been an accident. So
Yeah.
he could literally have just lost control of the vehicle.
Yes.
He could have had a heart attack or a stroke and blacked out. It could have been a suicide,
Yeah.
where he intentionally drove into the wall.
Yeah.
It could have been a variety of different things. What are some of these scenarios that people are talking about, and what are the potentials here?
As is normal surrounding a high-profile death like this, involving a car accident, you'll remember there was a certain Mr. Colin Shabane as well who died in a car accident similar to this, and all sorts of conspiracy theories still floating around to this day, many, many years later. So surrounding this particular crash, there are a couple of theories that are being floated around. One is obviously the suicide angle. He came around the bend, saw the pillar, put his foot down, and just drove straight into it. He was not wearing a seatbelt, that we know from the pictures.
It was actually strapped in behind him.
That's
He had
right.
buckled it in behind him, right?
Because the modern cars, they would beep, beep, beep if you don't plug in your seatbelt. So he actually put it behind him on the seat, plugged it into the buckle at the bottom, and that stops the beeping from happening. You can see this clearly from the pictures of the car. But yeah, that's the suicide theory. Knowing I've been reporting on Bosasa now for some time. Our editor-in-chief, Adrian Basson, has been reporting on Bosasa since 2006. And we had this discussion yesterday, and I said, well, does Gavin strike you as the kind of person who would do something like this? And he said, no. There's just no way. And I agree with him. I just don't think that Gavin was in that mind frame. I don't
And
think
people
so.
that I've been speaking to in the legal fraternity seem to suggest that he was in it for the long haul, that he was ready to fight the allegations against him for as long as necessary.
That's my understanding as well. Gavin has never backed away from this. Even when, at the height of Mr. Agrizi's testimony before the Zondo Commission, and things were looking really bad for Gavin, there were very serious allegations of him. There was a video being played on a loop on the television news stations of him counting money in Bosasa's safe, things like that. If that didn't break him and force him to run away or go into hiding, then whatever was going to come next was definitely not going to.
On this theory about whether or not it really was him in the car, because it's amazing how many people seem to think that it wasn't him.
Yeah.
There are photographs. You and I have seen the photographs.
Yes.
We haven't tweeted them. We haven't put them on Facebook. We haven't put them up on News 24.
They're extremely graphic, yeah.
But from the photographs, the one is of Gavin Watson in the vehicle, and then there's one of him laid out on the tarmac,
That's right.
and his face is visible, and the gash on his neck
Yes.
is visible as well. Looking at those photographs, would you
100%
assume it's him?
100% it's him. No, for sure. It's definitely him. There's no doubt about it in my mind. As you say, the pictures are very graphic. That's why we haven't published them. It would be insensitive and also against journalistic ethics, I think, to publish or tweet those pictures. I think it's not fair to the family
And
or
yet
to
people
him.
still believe it's not him.
They would. It's someone like this, what's happening around him, the corruption, the politics, the intrigue, the drama, it's always going to be a situation where people won't believe it's him until, there's a DNA test posted online or something stupid like that. But from these pictures, it's 100% Gavin Watson. The question now is, the post-mortem is being done today. It's going to tell us whether maybe he had a heart attack, maybe he blacked out, maybe he, there's all sorts of things that the post-mortem could actually tell us, as well as the actual cause of death, whether he broke his neck, it was just blunt force trauma, that sort of thing.
So let's talk about another alternative theory, that he may have been run off the road, that he may have been chased, that there may have been some kind of malicious involvement, that he may have been murdered, essentially.
Yes.
What evidence is there around that?
None. There is no evidence to support any of these theories other than it was an accident. Whether purposeful or whether just a pure accident on Mr. Gavin Watson's part, there's no evidence that there was another car even near him. If you look at the pictures of the accident scene, there's no scratch marks on the back of the car from someone maybe bumping him. There's nothing like that. So these theories, I suppose, are to be expected. It's to be expected that people would think, Gavin Watson, corruption accused, Bosasa, suddenly he dies, it's all very suspicious. But sometimes the explanation
Because
is
he
not
was
that
going to
strange.
testify at his own tax inquiry today. I think that's
correct.
probably what's leading to the speculation.
Yes.
And the fact that there may have been a prosecution looming.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. These things do crop up. The tax inquiry has been going for several months. Gavin Watson has been there already. This was just the first time that he was actually going to be asked some questions. I don't think he was running away from that tax inquiry. I think he'd been attending it. His lawyers had been attending it. They'd been engaging on some issues. Obviously, we can't go into too much depth or detail about what's been happening at the tax inquiry because it's highly confidential tax matters. But at the end of the day, Mandy, I think we should leave the speculating totally to one side. We should leave these conspiracy theories alone, and we should really just try and look at each and every fact that we can establish and put that on the table. And in a couple of weeks' time, we would have enough facts to actually determine whether this was someone was chasing him, whether there was a shooter on the grassy knoll. Which, I think if there was a shooter on the grassy knoll, we could probably solve JFK's assassination at the same time. But I don't think so. The problem is something that's going to lead and fuel the speculation. That section of road, not a single CCTV camera.
That was what I was about to ask you, is why is there no footage? Why are there no cameras there? It's a national key point. Where are the cameras?
There's nothing. I walked that stretch of road all the way back up to the R21, and I could not find any camera that even pointed in that direction. There are, of course, cameras on the highway, pointing down the highway. But on that little section of drop-off road, as you walk down it, there are billboards, there are lights, these tall light fixtures. There's nothing. There's not a CCTV camera in sight. Then you have the parkade on the one side that overlooks that little section of road. There's not a single camera in that entire parkade pointing outward.
What about eyewitnesses? Any vagrants, any motorists, anybody who could have seen what happened?
There are signs that there are people living under that bridge. Some homeless people maybe are living there. I did speak to one homeless man who was sat there towards the very late afternoon. He had not seen the actual accident, but he knows that there are people who sleep there every night. And we're actually going to go and try and find these people to maybe find out. Look, that section of road, also that time of the morning, exceptionally busy. There must be someone who was driving past who saw the accident happen, who saw something happen, but probably in a rush to catch a flight, didn't want to stop, just carried on driving. That's how people are.
So, Carl, what are the implications of Gavin Watson's death now for the state capture inquiry, for his tax inquiry, for the NPA investigation? Where does this leave all of that?
Well, it leaves investigators in a very difficult position. They have a lot of information that shows that Gavin was involved in some very dodgy things, including paying bribes to politicians, paying bribes to government officials. But now they will never be able to put these questions to him. And legally, there's just no reason for them to continue trying to investigate Gavin Watson if he's dead. There will be no justice for him, even if they find that, here's a video of him handing some money to someone. The sad reality is that Mr. Watson is gone, and that justice will never be meted out on him, regardless of what we think or feel. So I think the investigations are definitely going to continue into other directors of Bosasa, to other matters of the company, but they're going to hit some serious stumbling blocks every time Mr. Gavin Watson's name is mentioned from now on.
And the implications for Angelo Griti and also for the politicians who were allegedly bribed. Can they now just put the blame on the dead man?
I'm sure they can, and I'm sure that some of them are going to try. And I think we need to guard against that. I think the state capture inquiry definitely will guard against that. I think they will take into account that, a very high-profile figure that was most certainly implicated by evidence before that commission is now gone. So it's going to be interesting to see how the various processes handle this. You spoke earlier of an NPA process. There's definitely an NPA process going on. There's so many things happening: the tax inquiry, Zondo Commission, various criminal investigations, and a lot of them are going to die here with Gavin. And it's going to be quite surprising, I think, if the NPA pursue any sort of investigation that links directly only to him.
Thank you, Cowan, investigative reporter at News 24. No doubt we are going to be speaking about the death of Gavin Watson for a long time to come, and you may have your own theory about what led to Gavin Watson's death, or whether or not he really is dead, or whether he is sipping cocktails on a desert island somewhere. I'm Mandy Wiener for News 24.